Welcome to the Weekly Whiff podcast episode. We're not counting episodes anymore, are we? But this is 26. We're up to the big sweet six.
I think so.
And yeah, man. Yeah, 26 episodes. We're going to get to the point where we've got more videos and subscribers, and I look forward to
I just want to get to the
it.
point where our quality is consistent.
Quality is consistent. That would be the day, right? Recording studio, all this stuff. Anyway, yeah, welcome to the Weekly Whiff, where we continue our quest for some level of ascension beyond really crappy headphone sets, sweltering humidity in Queensland, and what I presume is a borderline dictatorship in Victoria.
That's not that bad. I just live in my room.
That's fair. Hey, you can't be dictated to if you never leave the house, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay, cool. Solid. So, man, how's your week been?
My week has been I've been watching more shows than I've been playing games. The new season of JoJo started, so I was watching that. JoJo's fun. I like it a lot. I've read all the manga, so like I basically know what's happening at this point. And this part's probably my least favorite, but I'm enjoying the anime more than I did the manga, and that's always the case for me with JoJo. But it's a lot of fun. So that was a good season. I fucking hate Netflix and how they're airing it, but besides that, the quality of the show is good, so I can't be too mad at Netflix, I suppose.
Are they doing it a week at a time, or are they? Is
I
it
don't know
one
how they're
episode a week?
doing it because they released it. They released 12 episodes all at once, and so like
Yeah.
12 episodes were just there to watch. But like, there's a lot of conflicting information. Some people are saying that we'll get they'll start releasing it week by week when Japan catches up to what's been uploaded on Netflix. There are some people saying on January 1st, like 12 more episodes will get uploaded. I'm just sitting here like, why the fuck couldn't we just watch it week by week? I don't want to fucking watch it like a bunch of episodes. And I feel bad for all the anime only fans to have to ignore all the subreddits and stay away from the fan base because there's going to be fucking spoilers everywhere if they want to watch it week by week. It's just a fucking stupid way. I hate how Netflix do this with anime. They always do shit like this. I talked about it enough in their fucking streaming service episode.
So, James, what else have you been watching?
I watched Squid Game as well because that's been fucking recommended to me. Like to high end because I like death game genre pieces of media a lot. I've read a lot of manga for it. Watched a fair bit of anime for it. It was decent until the last 3 episodes when it like got dog shit terrible. But um, other than that, I'd say it's a good show, worth to watch if you're interested. I think it's a bit overhyped, but a lot of things normally do nowadays with Netflix. It feels like there's always something that's like trending week by week, like whether it be a movie or a show.
I was gonna ask you about it actually because everyone told me Squid Game's amazing. I've seen snippets of it. And I'm just like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's fine. Like I not fine. I think it's good. There's a lot of good episodes in it. Like it's 9 episodes. I'd say 6 episodes are actually good or really good, and then the last 3 episodes are just really bad. I think I just have a negative impression of it because the last 3 episodes were really bad, and I hated them a lot. And that's the last thing I consumed of the show as a whole. So it kind of like is more fresh in my mind rather than like the good episodes. But objectively, it's like good. It is good. I just really do not like those last 3 episodes.
Tying back into last week where we were talking about endings and how they're executed and not executed correctly, we now have
Yeah,
a better
exactly.
example for that. So that's good.
It's weird. I think it actually would have been better if it wasn't with Netflix because it feels like they wanted it to be a one season thing, but then they had to put in that kind of second season tie in because it was like because they wanted it to like do well or whatever. And yeah, I think the things that hinder it most for the ending is that it does kind of leave it open for a sequel for me. But it is what it is.
Sequel hook of the whole thing that bothers me, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
um, yeah. And we talked about it in the ending episode. It's just like the idea of like things could be finished, but you leave it open because of money, essentially. So, which is kind of funny considering what the show is about, but it is what it is.
What else have you been watching, man?
That's about it, basically. Those like two shows that have been my last 2 weeks, essentially. I haven't been playing mini games because there's nothing on my radar right now. Um, I don't think I fucking gamed myself out with like how I've been playing games the last few months. And yeah, besides that, not much really. I play Minecraft a lot now, but that's fucking the usual for my last few months of my life, basically.
Minecraft has also got some soul elements to it.
You're very quiet right now. Whenever I talk, for some reason, you get really quiet and like there's like a large period of silence. So I don't know if you're actually talking or not.
I am attempting to talk. What I was going to say is, if you like that whole crafting and you also like Souls like combat and all the rest, I'd strongly recommend Valheim.
Valheim. Oh yeah, I've heard of that. I think one of my friends likes it.
It's awesome, man. If you can get 4 guys on a server, it is awesome. I would very strongly recommend Valheim.
I have to
Um,
check it out.
yeah, man, it's cheap and it's got. I don't think it's very graphics intensive, and I'm not sure if it
Oh,
has
my
a
computer
console
is
launch.
very fucking shitty.
It's weird, dude, because it's procedurally generated like Minecraft is. So every world seed is random, and it has like PS2 style graphics to it, but the lighting is so pretty that you don't even notice. It's really impressive. I'd strongly recommend Valheim to anybody. But I don't know, for whatever reason, when I started playing that game, I got addicted to it for like a month and a half. I couldn't stop playing it.
I think one of my
Yeah.
friends has played it though. I've heard the name before.
Mm.
Obviously in a
It's like
game context, because I think Valheim is actually a thing. But
yeah, it's it's like Viking Minecraft with bosses in it. It's like, and I feel like the combat's actually really cool too. So I don't know, I really enjoy it.
I have to check
But
it
yeah,
out.
Valheim would be
What have you been doing this week, Pete?
what have I been doing this week, man? I watched Arcane on Netflix, and I cannot begin to say how much I adore it. And it's funny because it's League of Legends, and I have no prior
Yeah.
knowledge of any of that stuff. And I was talking about this off the pod, but I am prepared to say it could very well be one of the best video game adaptations of anything ever.
Ooh.
So
Well, I will watch it eventually, and then we will get to talk about it because I do.
I
I,
yeah,
I would be interested in talking about it from what I've
I
seen.
cannot recommend that series enough. It's 9 episodes long. So kind of
Yeah,
like Squid Game, weirdly enough. It's made by a French studio, and
French.
by Riot. So it's by the guys who did the League of Legends animation stuff, and they partnered with this French studio. And I heard that because they were going to release it like 2 years ago, but because of the pandemic, they pushed it out. And allegedly, what I was reading was that they did like it's 3 months to storyboard and like do an entire episode. So they had the time and the effort and the energy to go through and like spend 3 months of an episode just to get it perfect.
It's pretty impressive.
Um, and I would say the animation's up there with like into the Spider Verse kind of levels of quality. The art style's
Damn.
fantastic. Everything's fluid. The storytelling's awesome. I don't know.
Don't fucking don't blow your load yet. We will talk about it at some point. It is on my watch list.
It's been living in my head for a while.
Peter's mumbling, or like it sounds like he's mumbling.
Can you hear me or nah?
I can hear you now. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's been living rent free in my head for like the last week, so I cannot recommend that enough.
All right.
Arcane's a big one. What else have I been watching? I picked up a bit more Demon Slayer recently, so I've been trying to get through the rest of the anime that I haven't
Oh,
seen
nice.
yet.
Well, the
So,
second season's out now, so
oh,
that
okay,
is.
there you go then.
I am so sorry, my doorbell's ringing and there's like a mail I'm delivering, so you're gonna have to just stall for a bit. Be right back.
That's okay. If anyone can hear me, that's fine. Shaun's getting food, and that's entirely fair. But I would take this opportunity to rail about Arcane for a little bit longer. However, I feel like that's, as you said, a no sort of contest thing. As for the rest of my week, I can't really tell what else I've been doing. Obviously, Magic, the Gathering thing, that's all been happening. Um, and yeah, I've actually been listening back to last pod and a whole bunch of other stuff that we've been doing, and I am feeling very good, secure, and comfortable about the future of this podcast. And I hope that Shaun continues to hang in with me and gets to keep doing it forever because I'm really enjoying it. Also, been thinking a lot about trying to get this on platforms. It's a little bit easier without having to worry about leaving YouTube open.
What the fuck are you talking about?
Oh no, I was just sort of saying, it'd be nice to move all this over into a more audio format at some point.
Damn, you were advertising.
Yeah, bro, just straight up chilling for our pod. What do you expect?
But yeah, Demon Slayer season 2 I was watching actually because that officially started. But yeah, it's good that you're
Yeah,
catching up right as it's starting.
I watched. I think the last episode I saw was like where they were. I don't know if it's spoilers or what, but like he essentially went through the kid with all the spider webs who had the crazy
Okay, you went
family and
too far
everything.
from the end then.
Yeah, and it was like a deconstruction of the whole thing. And I do feel like there was a tonal shift towards the end, so I feel like I might have actually started the second season. It's where they get arrested or something.
I think I know what you mean. No, that's still season 1.
Okay, cool. Just
Yeah.
making sure.
Yeah, Demon Slayer is good. I really like it a lot.
Yeah, it's really impressive, man, and I think that it does everything a shonen should do, but it has some really delicious, dark, and scary elements in it too.
Yeah,
Um, while still maintaining that whole thread of how important humanity is. I think it's been a while since I've seen that. It's interesting with that one. Just side note to have a main character who's so all loving. You know, he's so invested in people and in humans and everything else, and the rest of the world is so brutal and uncompromising and unforgiving towards him. I really like that dynamic of him actually giving a shit about humans and demons as well, and like actually caring. He's sort of the bridge between these two worlds, and I really like how that all plays out. So I'm really
yeah,
enjoying it thus far.
yeah.
What
The
I've
the
seen.
author strikes a good middle ground with Tanjiro's character because at the time reading it, especially, that was around when I was starting to get tired of like the more kind of kind-hearted, naive kind of main characters. But Tanjiro strikes a really good middle ground where I really enjoy him a lot. And I'm not even sure what it is exactly that he does differently. I think it's just more kind of the genuineness of it. I like the characters a lot in Demon Slayer. I think Demon Slayer is really good, and because it got popular, it's getting a lot more hate than it deserves now.
Yeah, man. So that's me. I can't really talk about anything else I've really been doing. So
Fair
yeah,
enough.
pretty much. But you said you had some juicy topics lined up for us, so
Yeah, I
let's
do have
go.
a juicy topic actually. So first off, we'll start with this. First of all, I lied to you. I actually watched Arcane yesterday, all of it. So we can have that
Oh,
discussion
oh,
today.
ah, you cheeky bastard! You did that to me. Oh god
Yeah, I
damn it.
watched the
Okay,
last
fine.
episode this morning actually. That's part of why I was an hour late.
Okay, I got you. All right.
But
So what are your thoughts?
I guess since you had your spiel before I have mine. I went in. Gonna be completely honest. I went in thinking this is gonna be just fine at best. It's League of Legends. I fucking hate League. I don't care at all. I left it thinking that was pretty damn good. Honestly, that was pretty fucking damn good. I enjoyed it a lot. It's a very enjoyable ride. I absolutely agree. I think it's some of the best animation I've seen in a very, very long time, like Spider-Verse level kind of animation quality. And the story's good. Um, it's it's like generic at points and flawed, but I think it tells its story well enough that I can overlook a lot of its shortcomings. And I think the characters are really fucking good as well. Actually, that's the thing that stunned me the most. I liked much of the characters as I did. Oh, you're silent, so I don't know if you're talking right now.
God damn it. It's really good. I don't like. I love the character morphs and the character moving around that. But did you want to talk about Arcane, or do you have a more general topic?
We'll talk about Arcane and probably like I think we can tie it into kind of video game adaptations as a whole as well, actually, because that is another topic I had for some point. So it's funny
I
how
wanted
that
to
lined
talk
up.
about adaptations generally, so we can just make this the adaptation episode.
Yeah, I
So I
guess so.
wanted to
Yeah,
talk to you. I wanted to talk to you about like how you feel different adaptations have moved across and how we go about different things. So we can get into that later, or we can just start with that. I think that it's very difficult to
we'll
adapt
talk about
video.
Arcane first, and then kind of move into adaptations. I think as well. You're also getting a bit quiet, so you either
Uh,
just you have to either
I can
decide if
go
the
back.
headphones are
We
work.
can we can go back into swimming pool quality if you'd prefer, dude. But
Try to swimming pool quality, because yeah,
okay, fine. You pulled my arm. Ah. You pulled my arm, dude. You got me.
Jesus Christ, I need to turn you down a bit because I had you really loud because you were really quiet last time.
Um,
I
what?
hope that the listeners didn't just get their eardrums bursted as well.
Oh, jeez. All right. Let's just ease off on this. How's that for volume output?
That's good. Yeah.
Yep, that's
Uh,
better.
yep, that's
Cool.
better.
All right. Well, mad. So we're back to swimming pool quality, courtesy of Shaun.
Courtesy of Shaun.
The other quality might be awesome. You might be editing this and going, "Oh shit!" All right then.
I would fucking doubt it. Yes, you have to sit still a bit still, but it'll be fine. Or swimming pool quality is better than fucking peat suffocation quality.
Okay. I am gonna have to invest in a new fucking headset, dude. It's gonna have to happen.
Yeah, you would definitely have to. But Arcane.
Yeah. Okay. So tell me your initial thoughts, because I have a lot I can say about this.
Yeah. My basic thoughts are it's good. Like I'm feeling more kind of like an 8 out of 10. I don't think it's perfect, obviously. It's got its like flaws. I think its story is a little generic. I don't really care about the main villain too much until the final episode. That's when I think he starts becoming kind of compelling.
Yeah.
Um Like that's when like he becomes interesting and kind of unique to me, and there are aspects to him. And I feel a bit creeped out sometimes with how he interacts with Jinx in some of the early episodes. Like it made me uncomfortable, like in some areas. And then it kind of feels like they're going for the father-daughter dynamic. And I'm like, it feels like you're a bit all over the place with this dynamic, but it's a bit weird. But I still don't think it's terribly done. It's just kind of a little misguided in areas. And I think as a result, I don't really care much about the villain until like the final episode when he's becoming a bit more consistent in quality. But other than that, I think the characters are mostly good. To either being really great. I enjoyed Jace's and Victor's subplot the most, I'd say. That's probably the most interesting one to me, though I liked Vi a lot, and I'd probably say she was my favorite character as a whole.
Yep.
And then I think it's weird. It's the thing that was most weird to me reading it, like watching it, is I'm sitting there thinking the whole time, like, as someone that has never touched League or any of the lore, I don't know how much of this is somewhat like established in the past or known, or if like it's meant to be like this kind of predictable, I guess, in some areas as well. So it's very weird watching it where I was like, I'm gonna have to just not think about it and kind of give it a pass in some areas where it feels a bit like easy to predict, because obviously the characters are known to people and they probably won't want, like, there's no real reason to hide them. So that's like another thing that was interesting to me. I came in, obviously, the early exposure I have to League is years ago. One of my friends loved League and made me watch the fucking Jinx music video that came out when she like launched or something, and I didn't give a fuck about it at all. And then I have a friend right now who plays League and says it's the worst game of his life, and he fucking hates it because of how much how shit the game is, but he still plays it every week. So that's my experience with League, essentially.
Yeah, something pretty similar, man.
Yeah, and it's kind of wild how much this show is taken off, actually, because there's so many. I feel like there's actually like a lot of non-League fans watching it. Just a lot of people that don't play League at all watching it. At the very least, I had a friend that doesn't play League that much, at least that I think of, that I know of. And he was saying that he was interested in watching it, and yeah, watching it, I can kind of see why. It's good that they did go for the route of like not needing League fans, like not needing you to be a League fan to watch it, because it seems like it's mostly kind of easily accessible. Fucking hell.
Yeah.
And I think that works for it.
Absolutely, man. I think like this is just again tying into a greater theme of adaptation, but I think if you're gonna adapt something, if you're gonna adapt an incredibly popular and very profitable franchise, I reckon this is the way to do it. I reckon the way they went about, we have no you have no sort of preconditioning. You don't know anything about it. This is the world. This is the source material. This is what everything is doing. This is how it all sort of works. This is how this is the world, and you're going to get introduced to it through the characters. You're going to see all the political upheaval. You're going to see everything going on there. And that's like, you just come in knowing nothing about it and not needing to know anything about it, and you can tell the story organically through the characters and through the set pieces. And I think that's the best part about it, for me.
Yeah.
I think that one of my favorite things about it is that you don't need to know anything about League of Legends. You don't need to know anything about the video game. You don't need to know anything. You just go in raw, and you can just appreciate everything about it without needing to give a shit about the game. I love that. I genuinely, that's one of my favorite parts about it, is it's not sitting there. There might be a couple of subtle little nods and sort of winks to the people who do play the game, but for the most part, man, it doesn't need it. You can just sit there and just enjoy it for what it is.
Yeah, and I think it's really enjoyable. And while I said the story is like a bit generic in areas, I think it tells it really well and in a compelling way. Like it is essentially like the start is essentially the whole kind of the trope of like dad figure dies, like protect children, but they play with that enough that it's interesting. I think giving 3 episodes of time to develop the characters actually works in its favor, because you care more about the characters. And then obviously like having Jinx actually kill them all is like enough of a kind of twist to it that it adds some flavor to it.
Absolutely. I'll be honest with you, man. When Vander went down, I cried. Like I genuinely, my face. I was fucked up by it. I don't know why. I don't know what it is, because it takes a bit to crack me as a general rule. Like I'm quite empathetic and I'm really soft about a lot of stuff, but like, like BoJack hit me for 6, for instance. I had some existential freaking dread for weeks after watching BoJack. BoJack does a number on my freaking brain cell. It hurts to watch it. It's good. It's so good. But I don't know, for whatever reason, I saw Vander, like, and spoilers, I guess, but like Vander dying from a mile away, and I still was crying. And I think it's just because I agree with you. I think that they spend enough time with the characters, and I think this is a very rare occurrence now. Is
Yeah.
making a character-driven story and spending enough time with the characters to actually learn to care about them. And that's incredibly important. And I think that that's one of the things that carries this show the most for me. I give a shit about these people. I want them to be okay. I want to watch them do things. I want to see how they interact with each other. I care. I genuinely am on board, and I give a shit about them. And that is rare for me, man. A lot of the time when you're just watching sort of adaptations or whatever, I find it can be very difficult to actually give a shit about a lot of characters. You name anything that we've covered, like anything we've covered in the past, with a couple of exceptions, like BoJack's one of those that you definitely do care about the characters because it's an insanely character-driven story. The Grudge is another one where you do care, as we were talking about. So, what's sorry?
Valhalla.
Another one, yeah, excellent example of that. I think, yeah, there's a couple wherein like the just character-driven narrative that really like drives the point home and really makes you care. But I find that tends to be fairly rare now.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it is about Arcane that makes it so special to me, but it just drives it home. There's just some stuff in there that I really like.
Yeah.
Because I agree with you on the sense that you could say that the storytelling is kind of generic. You know, you've got Vi, and she's sort of your classic tough girl bruiser, sort of, you know, just throwing hands and throwing her weight around, hot-headed, hot-blooded, whatever. You've got, you know, your annoying younger sibling in Milo, who's cocky and whatever else, but kind of, you know, ultimately you've got the big guy in Clagor. You've got the sort of Vanda, the mentor figure with a dark history, who's just sort of a good dude, and he's trying to, you know, he's going through his redemption arc. You've got Silco, who's the whole, he's the villain of the whole sort of thing, but his whole shtick is more about, you know, just power and control and mean, you know, sort of winning by any means necessary, like literally giving up your soul to fight for what you care about, all that kind of stuff. That's what, and you know, Jace, the sort of scientist and science and progress and pushing that ahead, and Victor taking it to the next level, and literally willing to do anything to survive. Like all of these things in and of themselves, if you just sort of talk about it objectively, they're pretty classic character arcs. They're not very special in and of themselves, and I don't know why. In some sense, it's tied together the way it is. But
I think with Jace and Victor, it's like weird as well because it feels like they go more in depth in showing their like journey through it more than like most shows would, with like the kind of science in the wrong hands kind of thing. Though I do think they speed run Jace's character arc in a lot of ways, like where it kind of feels a bit fast paced and like they're kind of going through all these kind of character moments very quickly. Victor feels a lot more slow and laid back, and I kind of enjoy him more as a result of it. But I still like Jace by the end of it as well.
The one thing that was particularly jarring to me, I think, was the whole random councilwoman seducing him thing. That's one of the big things that to me to be weird.
It is a little out of nowhere. It does kind of strike me as a bit like when it happened, I was like, oh, is this actually happening? Like it feels like a second ago she was talking about him as if he was like a tool, or kind of in a way, like where he was like saying, I can't remember what she said exactly, but it gave off like a different impression. Then she like started fucking making out with him, like, all right, I guess this is happening.
that was one of the most jarring moments for me. I was like, I don't know where the hell this is coming from and how this is going to work.
I found it a little jarring as well when they do the time skip where you go from Heimdall being a bit concerned about all of it and then he's kind of like on board with them, like being scientists. I kind of get that years passed and he probably got more okay with them being scientists. Obviously before they did something and then he got more concerned again. But it like cuts to a scene where he's like saying like, oh, he's so proud of them and all that right after being concerned that they fucking unlocked magic for everyone. It is very weird, and that's what I mean by Jace's character arc being a little too fast paced for my liking. But it's still compelling enough, and I like Jace enough as a character that I find it interesting.
I personally think that was the perfect place to put a time skip in. If I
agree. I just think that the kind of contrast of like the last scene with Heimdall before the time skip and the first scene with Heimdall after the time skip is very jarring in a lot of ways. And maybe they could have like made Heimdall a bit more cautious in his first scene than he comes off as. I think that time skip is perfectly placed. I do think so.
I don't know. I mean, I could go on about the writing, the characters, and everything. I think a lot of what it is for me as well, and this has been said before, but I think the world building in this show is fantastic, and I think the reason for that is because visually it's stunning, but there's a lot of exploration into the mechanics of the world and how it all works, and you feel like the characters of the world actually have an influence on it.
Yeah.
So, in the example of like the Undercity and the Overcity or whatever, like Jace invents a new technology that literally in the time skip completely and radically changes things for the top. Like, and on the bottom, Stilco takes over and it completely and radically changes that around too. And you just like it. You feel like the main players in the story really do actually have an impact on the world around them, and I think that's one of the reasons why I got so engrossed in it.
Yeah.
Because the whole the thing with Powder turning into Jinx, that's a huge moment, and that's so crazy, but it's like an actual effect, and it's got a ripple effect on the rest of the characters. Vanda dies, the rest of the family dies, it psychologically traumatizes her to the point where she goes batshit. And then there's this time skip, and then when we sort of catch up with everything that's going on, you feel like everything that's happened, it's all perfectly placed, it's all fit in. I feel like there's no fat in this show. I think that's the other reason. It's lean, man. It's just lean. It's very lean. I feel like there's no wasted space. There's no filler. There's nothing that doesn't need to be there. Everything interlocks, and just every character interaction, every moment, every sort of exposition about the world is told organically through how the characters talk and have conversations. The cultures of the world are meshed deeply into the characters that exist and come from those cultures. And that's huge. I think it's masterfully done, man. And you could say it's basic and it's sort of simple, straightforward tropes, but damn, it feels lean, man. It feels really lean. The cut corners, everything's just where it should be at the right time. And I love that. I love about it.
There's nothing wrong with it being like basic or having generic plot lines, because I think they execute their plot lines well enough. I can just like stand back and notice and be like, it's not like a unique kind of outstanding story arc or anything. What's kind of unique is just how well they handle it and how well they balance the time with each character to make you care about them enough. I think it does it really well. Like I said, I enjoyed like pretty much all of the cast. I didn't like Caitlyn too much because I went back and forth between liking her and hating and finding her annoying and then liking her again. But other than that, I liked all the characters.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. I think
Jinx, I'm a little iffy about because I don't like that character archetype, but I think I like her hallucination scenes enough that it makes me find her compelling.
Yeah.
Especially like how they fucking frame Milo and all that. Like her fucking friends just like dead bodies or like just shadows of her friends, like her family just following her around is fucking pretty gnarly how they do it. Especially in that last episode when she kind of just has a breakdown. The way they illustrate it's really well, and I think that's what I find compelling for her, just how they illustrate everything around her.
Yeah. I think again the visual presentation really ties into it as well.
Yeah.
But
it's got like that nice mix of like 3D animation and then like 2D that I really fucking loved in it.
Yeah. There's like 2 or 3 moments in this show where I would say, why the hell is this here? The one was the sexting thing. There's just random. There's this whole this councilwoman's seducing Jace. Another one was that random Imagine Dragons video clip bit where they were just there.
Yeah. I actually remember that. Yeah, I was thinking that while watching it. Like, this is a bit interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. No, literally just that. Like I say, there's no padding or whatever. That was just one moment when I was like, I get that you're trying to. I'm getting shivers talking about this, dude. I get that you're trying to understand like the undergrowth of the world and how everything's changed, and you're playing in the theme song, but it's just like, why is there a 4-second cutaway of Imagine Dragons and a band playing in the corner?
Yeah, it is. That is like that. I get what you mean because I like that scene as it is, but those clips and cutaways, I absolutely agree. They're so fucking weird.
But like I said, that's like this maybe 2 or 3 or 4 moments in this entire show where I'm like, why is this here? The rest of it is just so good. But I want to ask, I'll sort of interrogate you about this a bit. What do you reckon the show does poorly? Like, what do you reckon? Because it's an 8 out of 10, which is very high for you. For something that you said, you were pretty skeptical about this going in. I remember I was talking to you about it.
Yeah.
So what points are you happy to sort of go, okay, this is pretty whatever, aside from the fact that it's kind of generic and you can kind of see the plot twists coming?
Yeah, that's fair. Personally, I would have liked more time with Caitlyn and Vi before they kind of started doing like the end of character arc stuff. Because it feels like they have one whole episode together, and then they get to the point of being like close friends, almost to the like point of lovers, and that's a little like I don't mind their character dynamic. That's actually why I want more because I enjoyed when they were on screen together. But it feels like they're on screen for like one episode basically. Then it's mostly Vi and Echo, and then like it's then they go to the council, and then they have their like stereotypical like their heroes breakup like thing. Like I hate that as well in movies where like the two heroes that you've been following have an argument and they separate. I I I can't think of a time it's been done well. It always fucking infuriates me. And when it did that in the show, I was like, oh, are we doing this now? Are we so? I would have liked more time with them. Is one of the major things that pulls me out of their subplot because I like Vi on her own. I like Caitlyn enough. I find her compelling. I just don't really buy the friendship is all like relationship between the two of them by the end of it, and that's kind of essential to the ending scene as well. But I think that I think they're done better than most like if like friendship or like relationship subplots are done in most shows. I'm thinking of Squid Game here because it's like a similar kind of character friendship plotline, which I think is just poorly done because it's like they have like about 2 lines of interaction before like the episode where it's meant to be emotional where one of them dies or whatever. But spoiler. um, but it's
Named
like
character, fine.
yeah, exactly. But like I think comparing these two scenes of like friendships, relationships, whatever. Arcane does it so much better. Like I at least buy the friendship between them. I just think that there need to be like a bit more between them for me to completely kind of be like brought in on it.
Yep.
Especially since it is kind of like almost like Vi having to pick between Powder and Caitlyn as well. So
Yep.
one more episode, I think, of like decent enough interactions would have been enough to bring me in. It doesn't ruin their whole subplot enough for me. I don't hate their characters or anything, but I do think
Yeah.
that I would have benefited from that. And then I said earlier as well. I don't find the main villain Celio or what I forgot his name
Still
Silco. I don't find him that compelling until the final episode, and that kind of detracts from the quality a bit for me. Where I'm not like really that invested into the villain that most of the subplots are like geared towards like getting. And I think it's mostly just a bit of like the kind of generic aspect. Like he's kind of a bit of a cliche villain in some ways. He has some cool moments here and there, but overall he's kind of a bit like boring. And I still think he's a bit misguided. Sometimes it feels like they wanted to go in a different direction with him and Jinx than they actually do go in. And I think being a bit more concrete and settled on that would have been better for me because I would have been able to find him more compelling. But as it is in the final episode, I like him. Like he's much more interesting to me in that final episode than he is any other point in the series.
Yeah, that's
And those
fair.
are
I think
those are the main
no.
two things that pull it back for me.
Yep. Okay. And so, what makes it like an 8 out of 10 then?
Pretty much everything else. While I did complain about those characters and those character interactions, I think everywhere else in the series is mostly good. I do also I said before I think Jace's character arc is a bit sped up, and I do think that detracts from it a bit as well. But for me, Victor is compelling enough that Jace's character arc I can kind of overlook in a lot of ways because Victor's character is consistent and the character arc that both of them are going through is consistent because of it. Um, I think I said before, I think that having 3 episodes to develop Vander and his family's like characters and all that, and like kind of how the world is before the time skip, is a really good decision. It lets you care more about everything, and then once things change, you actually can notice the change instead of being told that there's a change. So that's really good in my opinion. Obviously the animation's great. The soundtrack as well. Actually, I'm half and half on. There's some times where the music choice is fine, but then there are other times where I'm like, it's not to my taste. Specifically, I don't like the opening song. I don't like it at all. Like it just feels really out of place for me. But that might be
Yeah.
like a more personal preference thing.
Yeah, no, I'm a like I used to, I don't know. It's just a music thing. I really like Imagine Dragons' first album. Everything after that was kind of not as
Yeah.
good for me.
I have no issue
Yeah.
with Imagine Dragons. I don't even think the song on its own is bad. I just don't really know if I think it suits the series as an opening. Like I don't know. It just feels a bit weird. Like especially that opening visual. It's just not to my taste. But it's like it's not enough that I take a point from it. But there are definitely some scenes where I'm like not really that caring because of the music that's being played. But that's more of a personal preference. There's nothing the show can do there. I'm sure a lot of people love the music choices for the most part, and I'm not going to say that it's like inherently flawed or anything. It's definitely more of a personal preference that like holds me back from that. But there are some scenes where the music's good. There's Specifically, the fight between Vi and Steeler's like main girl at like in the last episode, like episode 9, like in the bar. That's got a good music placement in my opinion. That's like one of the strong ones. But that fight's really fucking good.
Yeah, man. I was gonna like I was very happy to sit there and fanboy about the fights for an hour because I just love how they're like framed. I
The
love
fight
how
choreography is really good.
Yeah, I just because it's, and this is just a little side note, little nerd thing. It's very rare that you actually see, in a sense, proper good boxing, like
Yeah.
in a show as an advantage. A lot of the time, I think this is just a general adaptation thing, but because especially in anime, aside from boxing anime or anime that revolve around boxing purely, there is a tendency to go for more the crazy martial arts, the flips and the kicks and the throws
like
and
flawless style.
yeah. Whereas with this one, it's a lot more like I can buy that Vander is a really good boxer, and I can buy that he taught Vi how to do that, and I can buy that she, grew up on the streets fighting, and even that in the first 3 episodes, the second one, I think when they get into a scrap with those kids on the street, and it's just brutal.
Yeah,
Like,
that is the first episode, but it's really fucking brutal.
Yeah, it's just like it's punchy, man. It's grounded, and there's one thing I could again talk about an entire episode about fight scenes and just fight choreography generally, and I won't. But there's this grounded. I love grounded stuff. I think it's one of the reasons I love John Wick so much is that it feels realistic. The same with the Punisher and Daredevil to a degree.
You like Nobody a fair bit as well, right? I remember we talked about that.
Nobody. That's bus fight scene is something I revisit on YouTube way too much.
Yeah, I agree. It's really good.
It's just something about like really grounded fights that have consequences. I love seeing, and it's just like if you're gonna get into a scrap, it's gonna be consequences. It's gonna take a toll, and so when you see that wearing down your main hero, they're not just an invincible force that goes through everybody. They're getting tired. They're getting beat up. They're getting hurt. There's a vulnerability to it. They're not invincible, and I love that. I really, really like seeing that in a great number of shows and adaptations, and just generally just fights generally. I like that kind of grounded element where it feels like there's danger to it, and it could go one of two ways. And a big part of this is tying back into the whole character thing. Characters fight a certain way because of how they were raised, and there's a story in a fight scene. So, for instance, when Vi first shapes up against the chick with the robot arm, like post time skip, she comes back and just beats everything out of her. I love that so much because it's like you see all of Vi's dirty boxing street style stuff against someone who's got more technological proficiency but less like finesse and skill, and so you get to see both of those elements, and it just makes it so cool. Like there's one moment in that fight where she crowds her in. There's like 2 walls on either side, and she's bashing their heads off the side of it, and she's using like her size, and then she's using her opponent's lack of reach as an advantage. She can get in close, and I just love it. I just love seeing boxing and fighting like that in an animated series where you can get away with crazy flip kicks and nonsense like that. It's just so cool to see, and I really love that about Arcane, especially, and just like the combat styles of all the different characters. Like in a video game sense, sort of whatever, but in a character sense, everything makes sense. It makes sense that Powder, for instance, or Jinx is much more of a ranged fighter, that she'll use more kicks, or she'll use a Gatling gun or a pistols or whatever to knock people around and do that stuff because she's smaller. She's not as built as Vi. Like Vi's character design post time skip, she's been getting beat up in a prison, and she's been beating people up in a prison for 4 or 5 years. She looks like a hardened convict, and she's scrapped one. And that's a good indicator to her character. And likewise, Silco he just knifes people in the back. Like he's this sort of Weasley, slim, conniving bastard who uses people. Like he's got people to fight for him, and he'll just walk up and knife you in the back. That makes a lot more sense to me for his character. And Jace, like when he gets into scrapping, he's got his hammer or whatever. He's using just sheer technological prowess. He's just using the power of his thing. He's not scrapping the same way, Victor doesn't get into any combat. The same with when it's one of the coolest moments in the show where Vander picks up a pair of fucking improvised knuckle dusters and goes to town.
Yeah.
That's sick. You just watch that and you just go, this is good. This is very, very good. I'm cheering. I'm jumping up out of my seat right now. I love this. I will get off this because I'm getting into a fucking tangent, but
Nah,
I
that's
just love
fine.
it, man.
But I agree. I like it when fights aren't just one-sided for the main hero or something. The more like a hero gets attacked in a fight, the more I'm enjoying it. It's why I like Sword of the Stranger so much, that samurai anime movie we watched ages ago.
Yes,
Because that
that's
movie's got some of the best sword fights ever. I fucking just the movement of the like just the precision of each character's like fighting style, just so good. And I just love. I'm more invested into a fight where obviously there's room for main characters just completely trump like styling on another character. There is room for that in shows as well. I don't think that it's always bad if the main character is just completely decimates someone else. But I want fights where like the main character's getting fucked up as well. And that bar fight, one of my favorite moments is in it is when they're like both like tired and Vi takes a drink and the other one's just sitting there like sitting down like glaring at them, and then like she slams the drink down and they fucking both just get up and like fight again. That's like the moments like that in fights just fucking make it for me.
absolutely, man. Absolutely.
That fight in general is just really good. That's probably one of my more favorite ones of the show, but that might just be because it was in the last episode. I just watched it, but it's really good. The show's got a lot of great fights in it. I think about the one where the Fireflies attack Jinx, Caitlyn, and Vi as well is pretty good, but I kind of like the movement and style design of the Fireflies with the hoverboards and flying around. That butterfly thing on the bridge as well is pretty good as well, actually. When, like, just, yeah, the animation enhances a lot of the fights as well. Just the visuals they go for are really great.
Absolutely. Again, I would say this earlier. I can't recommend the show enough, and I love it, man. I really, really love it, and I just think,
sorry, I just remembered there was another thing I didn't like about the show, and it's like very minor, but they're kind of a major character, so it annoys me. I didn't like Marcus's voice acting, like the cop that replaces the female cop at the start. He didn't. None of his lines sounded believable to me, and because he was in a major role, almost any scene he was in just took away from me. That's like another thing. Remembering the butterfly thing just reminded me because that's where he fucking bites the dust.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think I liked. This will be a spoiler discussion. I'll have a spoiler warning in it. People, when the second we said we'll talk about it, people should know that we wouldn't be able to shut our mouths for it. But yeah, and I think I liked the female cop more than I did him as well. So I was kind of a bit bummed out that she was like left out. But it makes sense, obviously, like narratively why. But other than that, yeah, like it's not like I think the flaws hinder the show that much. I just think that they could have enhanced it a lot more. But I think the story is just told so fantastically that it's like hard to not enjoy it. It's just it's just a really fun ride, and the fact that there's like no need to play League or anything to watch it. And from what I've seen, it looks like a lot of League fans enjoy it as well. I think it's a lot of fun, so it's good.
Yeah.
They struck a good middle ground, and you rarely do that with video game adaptations as well. And we'll probably be leading into the next conversation here with this, but you rarely get both the people that have played the game and people that haven't enjoying the content that is made of it. Like it feels like you rarely get both of them.
I agree. I think this has been a chronic issue with video game adaptations across the board forever.
Yeah.
And this is something
this is pretty funny as well because I will be watching the Resident Evil movie tomorrow, like the live action one that's coming out this year. Because I've got a friend coming over, so it's a shame that we couldn't do this like after that. But I'll probably just have a follow up point on that when I watch it next time. But I expect that movie to be fucking garbage.
What was that? Sorry, man.
Sorry, I expect that movie to be fucking garbage, though. So like,
isn't it a soft reboot?
Yeah, kind of. I don't fucking know what they're doing. Capcom just make money.
That's entirely fair, man. When they're not busy remastering all their old games.
Yeah, all their old games fucking don't really need it and are inferior.
Yeah,
anyway,
I don't. Yeah.
This isn't a Capcom rant. This is a video game adaptation rant now.
Well, I think it is. I mean, I can very happily talk about Arcane for longer, but I think we've covered most of the stuff that.
I don't have much else to say about it besides that. It's a really good show, and you should watch it.
Absolutely, that was the cheekiest switcheroo you ever pulled on me, Shaun. I feel the rug out from under.
I had to make sure you didn't talk about it for too long at the start because I was like, "Well, don't go overexert yourself. We're still going to be talking about it. You just don't know yet."
All right, gotcha.
A little trickster.
Well played, sir. Very well played. Very well played indeed. Yeah. So video game adaptations. I was going to talk about adaptations more broadly, but I feel like if we get into...
I would like to talk about adaptations, but yeah, video games naturally because we did just talk about Arcane as a start off. I think.
Yeah, I was going to talk also about, because you're obviously an aficionado of manga to anime and a bunch, but I think we can probably agree, just, and we'll park this for the minute, but just the whole thing of like manga in anime has been done better across the board, more consistently than a very good chunk of literally everything else.
Yes,
Is that
I would
unfair
say
to say?
so. I think that's a fair claim. There are obviously a fair amount of bad anime adaptations, but I think nowadays more than ever, it's a lot more consistent. It's hard to say, but like you have to be lying to yourself if you think that all anime adaptations are as garbage they used to be. And nowadays, like the contrast between anime adaptations and movie adaptations of stuff, yeah, anime and manga are much more consistent than other genres and mediums.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's start with film, because I think film's a very good example of it has its moments, it has its not moments. But we'll
Yeah,
start. Video games are such a difficult thing to adapt just consistently. I mean,
it's solely because like video games and films are just a different format entirely. Like video games are like almost always longer than movies to begin with, like from the get go. Like even like from a narrative standpoint, I think like there'd be a fair amount of video games that have a pretty long cutscene time compared to movies. So just on its own, getting that story down to a movie is pretty hard. But there are also games that just don't work in movie formats. Like Resident Evil is like an easy one to say because Resident Evil's like whole point as a game is that it's kind of like a B horror movie kind of schlocky parody in a lot of ways. Like the original Resident Evils, they're cheesy. They're like typical kind of zombie movies, but then they get like really B movie action kind of stupid moments in it. They're dumb cheesy films that are made to be played as games, and they're kind of fun because of that. So I feel like you lose. There's no point to making them into a movie because you're just making a dumb kind of cheesy B movie thing with just kind of inferior aspects to it in a lot of ways. And then there are games like Monster Hunter which don't have a narrative that you can adapt really to a movie. And a lot of the times it feels like movies go for games like that are just hard to adapt and there's no reason to.
okay. Have you seen the Warcraft film?
I've not. I've not. Don't people think that's good? That like some people?
I have no idea, dude, because I haven't touched it. I'm curious to see how that sort of goes down and how people feel about that.
I think one of my
Um,
friends saw it and thought it was shit, but
oh yeah, he probably would. Yeah, okay, fair. Yeah, we might bring him on the pod and have him talk about MMOs for a while. I'm half joking. No, seriously though, I don't know anything about that. I know that there are definitely video game movies that I've watched I've really enjoyed, but I know they're not like top tier quality.
yeah.
For instance, um, my standalone favorite video game adaptation for the longest time was Prince of Persia with Jake Gyllenhaal.
I remember you always talking about that. I
That
haven't
is,
seen it and I haven't played the games either, so I have nothing to add to that. But
I love that movie way too much. It's not. I just really like it. I don't know what it is about the thing, but it's just very very just fun. I just found it really enjoyable. And it would have like a high production value. You know, Disney got involved, and it was a weird sort of teetering point between moving over into the whole sort of Marvel Cinematic Universe and everything else. It was when animation was still pretty decent, like it was good, and it was just we don't really care, so we're just gonna have some fun with it. And because Prince of Persia is primarily like, what if Aladdin? It's sort of it's an Arabian Nights style thing. It's like
yeah,
you got some guy who's super agile and he's like an orphan prince and he's does parkour and he fights monsters and that's sort of how it works. And the adaptation of it, they brought in the inventor of parkour to do a lot of the choreography for it. So it actually looks quite legit. It's very impressive. Visually, it's fun. Jake Gyllenhaal and Gemma Arterton are in this. So they're like quite. I think they work really well. There's good chemistry there. The world is fun. You've got some like pretty hilarious side characters. It involves time travel, so it's got its flaws. But
fuck.
no,
Persia movie has time travel.
yeah, bro. Sands of Time.
Oh, is that? I didn't know. I didn't. Is Prince of Persia a time travel series?
It's not necessarily.
Okay.
But it does have stuff in there like that. It works as a developed plot device. It's kind of neat. There's some really impressive visuals and fight scenes in there. It's just fun. Like I really genuinely enjoyed that movie a lot. I haven't seen any of the Raiders. I haven't seen. Well, fuck, what are they? It's like Resident Evil, Tomb Raider. I know they're going to try and adapt Uncharted with Tom Holland. I'm not sure how I feel.
Saw that. I think it comes out either next year or soon, honestly.
Yeah.
I don't really know. That's like another case of Resident Evil where like Uncharted kind of is like an action treasure hunt movie, and as a game, like by default, that's really what it is. I love the Uncharted games, but like realistically, that's what they are. Like they are movies just kind of put into a game format, and that's why they're fun. So when you make a movie of it, it's kind of like, what's the point here? It's the same with that Last of Us series that was rumored to be made or something. Like I don't know if they're still doing that, but it's like
Yeah.
The Last of Us is great as a game because like it kind of is a movie as a game in areas, but like it's got the gameplay elements to it as well. If you're making it into a movie, it's kind of just like, what are you getting from this? Like there's no reason to make it. So
Yeah.
that's how I think Uncharted is going to be as well, where it's just going to be like, what's the point? Like you made a movie that the game was kind of a game of, essentially.
Yeah.
I no
That,
disrespect to Tom Holland as an actor. I see a lot of people kind of trashing him in some areas as like being cast as Drake. He's a decent enough actor. I'm sure he'll do his best, and money's money for him, really. Like who can fault him? He gets to play as like Nathan Drake as younger, I think. And
yeah. He does really
yeah,
well as Spider-Man and a bunch of other things. Like I think Tom Holland's one of the he's one of the hottest new actors right now. But damn, dude, he has pulled it out. Like he's putting some work in. He's getting his bread. He's making
yeah,
his. I appreciate that about him because I think he's a pretty good actor. I think he's got some pretty good range. Although I haven't seen all of his stuff, but from what I've seen of him, like obviously with Spider-Man, I love Spider-Man. I love the way he plays Spider-Man.
yeah.
So
No, I agree.
but everything else I've seen him in, I haven't gone, oh yeah, this is like a bad performance by you. It's like, no, he's killing it right now, and I appreciate that about him.
Yeah,
But so back to adaptations with video games. Let's say that your point essentially boils down to, hey, you don't like it's a game, and your source material in a lot of cases is pretty much. It's almost like they're trying to reverse engineer something getting reverse engineered, right? It's like you're trying to distill
yeah,
it back down into its form. Like we look at Uncharted, it's more or less what if Indiana Jones was a little bit more modern, less about Nazis and more about like just treasure hunting. It's like playing an Indiana Jones game, but
yeah.
with a
Exactly.
different
Like
stuff.
Uncharted is essentially like the video game Indiana Jones. Like really, like Tomb Raider
Yeah,
is as well in a lot of ways, which is kind of the same thing with Tomb Raider, where it's like, why are you making it into a movie? Like, and we've got movies of this already. Essentially, like there's not really much reason beyond like obviously making money and getting the fans to pay for it.
I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of video game adaptations fail is because I think that Hollywood looks at a tremendously, profitable franchise in video games and goes, well, we can make just as much money, if not more, out of making a movie adaptation out of this because all the nerds are going to come out of their basements to come and watch this thing. And 9 times out of 10, it just flops because the people who like play the game have gone, well, why do we watch a 90-minute movie when we can just go back and play this game ourselves and have a better time?
Yeah,
It doesn't capture the feel of playing it. It doesn't really do whatever. It's kind of cool. It's kind of whatever, but no one ultimately seems to care too much about these adaptions. Um, and I'm
yeah.
I'm, I'm trying to think of other examples. I mean, what
I
other video
can't.
game?
I can't think of any that I like. Like, is the thing. Like, Arcane's probably the best in my opinion. Like, and even then, I think Arcane works because the video game doesn't have like give you like. And there's not enough. There's not like a lot of lore from the game, from what I understood. Like after researching a bit after finishing it, so
Yeah,
like because there's not a terrible amount to work with, you got a lot of free room with it, and because like the creators are working with it in a lot of ways as well, I think that gives them a bit of an advantage. So yeah, like I think League works because of that. There's like not as much there, but most movie adaptations of games are kind of like the hot games that are out right now. Like I'm looking through a list right now to see what is like what movie games there are, and I can't find any that I enjoyed or I've watched and thought was good. I know some people like the Mortal Kombat movies, but I haven't watched them.
I haven't either.
Yeah, I haven't watched any of the old Resident Evil movies, but I've heard they're dumb fun. Essentially, yeah, a lot of these are just. Have you watched the Tekken live action movie that exists apparently?
No.
Okay,
Apparently, there's
that
also a
says
Dead
it.
or Alive adaptation.
Yeah, it probably would be. I think the Assassin's Creed movie was fucking dog shit, right?
Oh, I didn't hate it, but I also didn't think it was that great. I watched it
Yeah.
recently, like probably a couple months ago now. I
What
sat
the
down and watched
fuck?
it. What?
Untitled Ghost of Tsushima film. When the fuck did this get announced? Oh my god. That's another thing. Like, why would you make a movie of that? It's just like a old Japanese film as a game. Like, I don't know, game adaptation. I just think like going from movie to game, like from game to movie, is just hard because there's just a lot to work with what the lore is, and some of these games like that were like in that list, they have like shit tons of lore to them. Like people are gonna be upset if like the characters aren't done justice, or if you're doing something stupid. Like, yeah, Arcane is probably the best video game adaptation I've ever watched. I don't even think there's like anything that comes close to it, unless you
No.
consider Overlord a live action adaptation of what's it fucking called? Wolfenstein
Call of Duty.
kind of games. There's something I can't remember what people compared it to, but like the kind of Doom kind of Overlord Wolfenstein. Yeah, Wolfenstein I think is the thing people were comparing to and saying like, oh, if you consider this a video game live action adaptation of the Wolfenstein games, it's pretty good. And Overlord's a great movie, so I'd agree with that. But but it's not actually like a live action adaptation. It's just very fucking cheesy and goofy in the same way. But yeah, like
They're not sitting on the brand name to try and wrangle money out of it. And I think by boiling it down, man, a lot of the time that's what it comes down to. It comes down to a lot of Hollywood executives seeing an incredibly popular, like billion-dollar franchise and going, we can adapt this and make some of that
yeah,
money.
I always that's why I don't watch a lot of them because I kind of boycott them. The only reason I'm watching the Resident Evil one is because my friend was like, "Hey, will you watch it if I pay for your ticket?" I was like, "Fine, whatever, I don't care." Like, so I'm not even paying for the ticket, so I'm like, "Whatever." I'm watching a Trainwreck for free, essentially. My friend paid for him and gave them money, and yeah,
Well,
it's just like,
you're getting paid to watch it, yeah.
yeah, exactly. I normally boycott them because of that, but yeah, it's just like I just can't see it working too well because some games need more time. And the games that don't, theoretically, it's kind of a matter of like, well, what's the point of making them? Like, so your Last of Us, your Uncharted, your Ghost of Tsushima's, apparently, what's the point of making them as movies? Those movies already exist.
And this has been going on forever, dude. There was a Super Mario Brothers live action adaptation.
Yeah, yeah,
You know, I think this has been going on for ages. It's like, hey, brand recognition. Let's get everyone to watch this. It's kind of whatever. But moving off video games for the moment, I think that's my issue with the adaptations for the most part. I feel like you just play the game, man. Like
What
most of the time,
about game adaptations for movies?
oh boy.
There
Look, I think
are some
there
good ones, honestly, here and there.
was
In
an
terms of
era,
those.
bro. I honestly believe there was an era with licensed games where some of them were bangers.
Yeah.
Absolute bangers. I think they were fantastic. I remember playing the Spider-Man 1 adaptation of the movie on the original Xbox. I think it was in the era, dude, of literally PS2, GameCube, and the original Xbox, where they were like pumping out a bunch of like licensed games. It was literally a movie would come out and there'd be a game of it. It was ridiculous. There was so many of them, and some of those were really good. Like, I mean, really good. And some of them were not.
Yeah, some of them definitely went up.
Some of them were not. I don't know. I think a lot of the time it was just aggressively fine, but basically there was a more of an understanding between game companies and Hollywood. I think they were like, this is a cool thing. I think it was the other way around. It's always the other way around, dude. It's quite funnily.
Yeah, it really has, yeah. I'm actually kind of sad that it stopped. Like, a lot of those games are trashy, but I don't know. I kind of wish that they still, like, a lot of video game, movie, fucking licensed games or whatever actually still existed nowadays. Yeah, I just want them to keep existing because they were fun. They were funny.
It was an era, though. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
360 PS3 eras where they stopped that shit. I think they went, nah, we've had enough.
I wonder what was the last major one, or if there actually was a major one. Like, because it feels like they died after a certain point.
I'm going to hazard a guess it was 2013, 2014 is when it stopped.
I'll have to look into it later because the only list I found had like years sporadically. So, but
yeah, I think I would have hazarded a guess if I had to. I'm not going to like put money on it, but 2013, 2014 is when games really started to become. They're already like well into being their own thing, but I think there was a period between 2012 and 2014 where games just went, you know what, we're making more money than Hollywood. Let's just go.
Yeah.
And before, games weren't making as much, so they used to adapt off Hollywood. Now Hollywood's trying to adapt off games. It's a very funny little shift. It's been completely inverted.
Yeah. Maybe eventually the inverse will happen again, and there'll be a new era in the future where movie games happen again.
I do not think so. I don't think it's going to happen.
I don't think so.
own identity, man. I think it's like I said, it's bigger. We established this ages ago. It's a bigger there's more money in video games now than there is in Hollywood,
Yeah.
but quite a large margin. So I don't think it's going to go back around another way.
Oh,
And
no, definitely not.
I think Hollywood's on its back foot now. I think it's starting to, because with like we've already talked about this in previous episodes, but with the rise of streaming and a whole bunch of other different formats, there's a big shift towards like independent media or other kinds of, like Netflix, for instance, being able to make Arcane is an excellent example of this, or Prime adapting certain things, or Stan or whatever. There's all these new series coming out, and there's all these new movies that are getting made that are just beginning to transcend Hollywood. And because people can watch them from the comfort of their own homes, it's kind of put Hollywood on the back foot. And there's still bangers coming out of Hollywood. It's not to say that they haven't still got that ability, but it's becoming less and less.
Yeah.
And I found that I go to the movies less and less, man. There's very few movies I get excited about now.
No, that's fair.
I get more excited about new games coming out. I get more excited about new series coming out than I do about games, quite frankly.
Yeah.
I do about movies, rather. And there's like a new film coming out. It's like June's coming out, like June, like the new June movies.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't care. Like, I never got invested in this. It's an adaptation of a book, and I think this will neatly tie into the next thing. Movies adapted from books. That's a very interesting one for me, because there was also an era. I mean, there's always happened. There's always been adaptations of movies to, like, of books to movies. That's been going on forever, and I think that's a weird one, because I think there are very few absolutely beloved, like, entrenched book series in the public consciousness that have been made into good movies.
Mm-hmm.
The ones that did slapped hard.
Yeah.
Like, what do you reckon? So just big book series you can think of that got into like really good movies.
Oh, Harry Potter, like, it's the obvious one. That one fucking exploded. And for years after that, like, so many movies were trying to recapture that by, like, adapting books and being like, is this the next big series? And I don't think they ever got one. They never got another one, in my opinion. I can't think of, like, another movie series that came out that was as big. Like, you can argue Twilight was big or 50 Shades of Grey, but not in the way Harry Potter was. Nowhere near the level. But, like...
It's not Divergent, not I Am Number 4.
Yeah.
Like, I think there was again, this is talking about another era, but after Harry Potter fucking killed it. And I think one of the reasons was because they were so faithful to the book adaptation in some senses, but also there was a bunch of different directors, but they kept all the same actors. And there was just there was a level of continuity, and there was a level of creative vision that each director could sort of do a different thing with it, but they managed to stay true to the source material enough that it became absolutely beloved across the board. I think that'd be fantastic. Yeah, and this is tying back into the whole manga and anime thing. I think that the reason that manga is adapted so well into anime is because anime takes, like, the story, or even light novels, say, they take it very seriously. For the most part.
For the most part, yeah.
But yeah, just go back to books. I think, yeah, Harry Potter was such an era that it spawned an entire attempt of Hollywood on the part of trying to adapt, like, young adult novels to try and be the next Harry Potter, and in most cases they failed miserably.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I just remember for years after Harry Potter, there being so many books that, like, there were so many book adaptations, and it was so obvious they were trying to capture it. I thought that Hunger Games, when it first came out, like, reading Hunger Games books and watching the movies come out, that they were trying to recapture that. That's why all those movies also fell into that trap of having the last one be split in 2 parts as well, in my opinion, because of Harry Potter.
Yep.
Which is funny, because some of those movies did not need to be split into 2 parts.
Not at all. I think, Divergent was whatever. I thought the first movie was half decent, and after I never read the books, I just watched the movies.
Harry Potter was crazy. It's weird to think, like, that was such, like, a, like, pop culture, like, fucking phenomenon. Like, really, like, it, like, yeah, it was wild, and it's weird to think that, like, somewhat happened in my lifestyle, but not really too much, because I wasn't too much invested into it after the fact.
Oh, your lifetime, you mean?
Like, oh, so, like, it happened during my lifetime, but, like, it's weird to think about because I wasn't invested into it until, like, around the last film was coming out, basically. Like, that's when I got into the series and read all the books and started watching the movies. I think I watched the first part of the Deathly Hallows in cinemas, but I never watched the second part, apparently. Apparently I didn't care. But yeah, it's weird to think. It's like...
I was 100% one of those kids that grew up reading Harry Potter. I mean, I read The Philosopher's Stone when I was, like, 5-6 years old, dude. I was a massive Harry Potter stan for, like, years. I mean, I saw it. half. Like, there was 10 years there where it was just my favorite shit ever. It was my favorite series. I read all the new books when they came out. I watched all the movies. I went out to watch all the movies. I got really excited about it. It was just awesome. Like, it was one of my favorite things. My dad would be like, we're going to go watch Harry Potter. I'd be like, just cheering. I was so excited. And I was just remember being amazed at the quality of the movies and how good they were and how like faithful they were, and loving watching the movies and loving watching the, just reading the books again. Yeah, it was so well adapted. I would argue
It's almost like our generation's Star Wars in a lot of ways. Obviously, our generation watched Star Wars as well. But
Yeah.
in terms of like things that were out as we were watching them as kids, it almost is like the equivalent of that when I hear people that like watch Star Wars as they were kids, like, and how they were coming out and how crazy it was, or how big it ended up being. Funnily enough, they're always like, even nowadays, they're still trying to rekindle that Harry Potter interest with a bunch of like sequels and movie like announcements.
They're doing a HBO series where they're going to reunite the cast and stuff on HBO, on like HBO Max or something. And I was like, man, that is just credit to how much of an institution that entire like franchise is and was and still is to so many people.
It's wild. It is probably arguably one of the best book adaptations in cinema, in my opinion. Like, in terms of like how successful it was. I can't think of any that are probably as big, like in terms of like adaptation.
Lord of the Rings, dude.
That's fair. I forgot about Lord of the Rings, actually. That's completely fair. Yeah. I haven't read the books or watched the movies, so I can't comment on them too much now.
Okay, well, we need to change that.
I do. I have a friend that like gave me all the books, and he's like, now you can read them, and I have read one chapter.
Lord of the Rings is a slog, dude. It's not. It is.
I enjoyed that chapter. I enjoyed that chapter a lot, and I do want to read it. I'm just a fucking plebeian that will read anime, that will read manga and fucking light novels instead of actual books, apparently.
That's fair, man. Look, Lord of the Rings is and remains, in my like humble opinion, the greatest fantasy series that has ever existed and ever will exist. I can't name anything that's better than that. It is the progenitor. It is the OG. It is the business. It is the root. It is what everything came out of. It is the reason that Dungeons and Dragons and fantasy as a genre exists, is because of Tolkien. That is like, and the movies, man, are just they're stellar. Like, even now, they're so freaking good. And this was made in the perfect. I think it was made in the perfect time. It was It was 2000 to 2003. It was when technology had picked up just enough to make some of the stuff feasible, like Gollum and all the rest. Like just their visual effects to be able to capture like the awe and the scale and like the craziness of the books. It was just on point, but it was still in that era where practical effects were still incredibly important.
Yeah.
And dude, I cannot begin to express to you how good of an adaptation Lord of the Rings is. It's not perfect. They miss stuff, but we're talking about a novel that is getting on 1,800 pages long.
Yeah,
like, it is huge, and it's got an entire universe around it. I am concerned about the new upcoming Amazon series. I don't know if they're going to do any justice to Tolkien's vision. I don't know how it's going to go down. I am concerned, but the original Lord of the Rings trilogy and the book adaptation of that and the way it kicked off, it won so many freaking Oscars for visual effects and literally everything, dude. It was crazy good. But I think Harry Potter has a bit more of a resonance with younger audiences.
I think, more people would have probably watched it. Or, like, not watched it, but, like, it was a bit more popular, I'd say. Like, Lord of the Rings was kind of that more, like, profound taste thing, like, it feels.
Yeah. It's also, you got to remember, Lord of the Rings came out in like the 50s. So a lot of the people who and a lot of the people who read that and then loved the series, when they went to watch the movies, they were getting in, like, Lord of the Rings has been a staple in every serious fantasy nerds, it's been a staple in everyone's diet who's an actual proper fantasy nerd forever, I think. But also, by the time that the movies came out, it was like the people who had originally read it and gotten into it probably weren't very happy with the way it was adapted, the stuff that was missed, the vision of Tolkien being corrupted by Hollywood, whatever. Like, there was a lot more hipsters and a lot more sort of old appreciators of the original text. That the movies did incredibly well. They were cinematic masterpieces, but just it just didn't have the same kind of staying power as there was an entire generation of kids who grew up reading Harry Potter. So
yeah,
and there was
exactly.
It was bigger. The movies were coming out. There was 7 of them. There wasn't just 3. And the movies are an hour and a half a pop. They weren't 3 or 4 hours each. You know, like it just had a bit more staying power there. But I think Lord of the Rings is
It's definitely not to say that it wasn't like popular. I had a lot of friends in high school that loved it as well, so it definitely had its crowd. I just think that I do agree that Harry Potter was probably a bit more mainstream than Lord of the Rings was. Funnily enough, Lord of the Rings kind of did the Harry Potter thing as well, with like milking the franchise at the end of like the 3 Hobbit movies.
Please don't talk to me about the existence of
Yeah.
No, that was unashamed money grab, and it horrified me, to be honest. I thought the first movie had potential, but after that I was just like, no,
Yeah.
stop. You're putting stuff in there that wasn't there.
Yeah.
It was loaded. They filled it in. They put filler in it. With Harry Potter, like, they still left stuff out, but it was pretty tight. It's pretty lean. The series and the movies worked the way they did because it did work. And Lord of the Rings, there was so much I had to take stuff out. The Hobbit is a fun little adventure kids story, and it's got a lot of substance to it, but they tried to tie it into Lord of the Rings and make it a big prequel trilogy. It was like trying to, do a prequel trilogy for Star Wars. It just wasn't necessary.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't need to do that. But hey, money.
Yeah,
but
money.
so that's just literature adaptations, man. And I'll just tap into one more thing because I know this has been going on for a while on this particular literature adaptation.
That's fine.
Dude, I saw a trailer today and I am so incredibly freaking excited. Jack Reacher is getting an adaptation on Prime.
Yeah. I think I remember you talking about Jack Reacher in the past.
I cannot wait for that. That looks superb. And Prime, this is what I was talking about earlier as well. We've talked about this before, but series, publishing platforms that do series are actually, in a lot of cases, are better suited to adapting novels and long form stories because there's so much more breathing room.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, you can do a lot more with it. You can pad a lot more. You don't have to do padding. You can just adapt it and work with it. And you can almost go word for word and actually get most of the stuff out and work with cinematography, and it works a lot better. Alex Rider was a series I grew up loving. There's a series of it. Jack Reacher. It's going to be a series of it. They're going to make a John Rain trilogy, a John Rain series. They're going to make there's a whole bunch of stuff coming out. It's going to be a series of book adaptations, and all of that's coming out on Prime, which I think is really cool.
Give us the Skullduggery as an animated series.
Is there? Where is it?
I said, give us the Skullduggery animated series, please.
Still 100% around that, man. I would love to watch like in the style of Arcane. Give me the Arcane level.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, that'd be
Dude,
so.
I would fucking eat that up. That would be so good, please. I would be all for that. That would be fucking amazing.
Yeah, I'd love that, dude. It'd be so good. But anyway, that's adaptations from literature. But let's talk about.
There's a little bit of like video games as well, because I know people like the Metro games, and that's adapted from a book. BioShock's adapted from a book as well. So it seems that video games do it as well. I haven't read either of the books for those. One of my friends has read the Metro books and thinks the Metro book is good, and the games are a good adaptation of it. But from what I understand of those games, they kind of take a bit of breathing room with it and loosely follow it. Oh yeah, The Witcher as well. Yeah, games seem pretty consistent with that.
Games do adapt some books, but The Witcher's like an excellent example of, hey, we got a book and we turned it into a video game, and then we turned it into a series. Like, it gets across the board, man. Book, game, series. Hopefully, there's no movie. We'll be right.
I wanted to briefly mention that because it was something that came to my mind when we're talking about book adaptations. What's next? What adaptations we're talking about next? We're gonna
anime manga. Let's go.
Anime and manga.
Light novels are different, though, right? So, can you explain to the people? And I want to actually ask this because I haven't noticed this because I don't read light novels or I don't read manga much. So, because I know that there's anime that are adaptations of light novels, and I know there's ones that are adaptation of manga. Now, does it go from light novel to manga to series?
There are some series that are light novels initially, then they get a manga adaptation, and then they get an anime adaptation. And it can depend. The quality can vary because I think there are some anime that focused more on the manga than they did the light novel, and fans hated it for it. But that does happen. Yeah, light novels can get manga adaptations, and they can get anime ones as well.
You do have direct from light novel to anime adaptations as well?
Yeah, there are some light novels that I think were just straight to anime as well. But it seems very common that they get manga ones first because it's kind of just easy to, I guess, make it or something. But yeah, it feels like a lot of light novels do end up having manga adaptations if they get popular enough.
So
I think most of the mainstream light novel kind of series probably all have a manga adaptation somewhere.
gotcha. No, I'm interested in this because I don't really delve into the written and the drawn of the anime of the Japanese spectrum. I tend to just go for the anime mostly.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of curious, like, is there a different kind of approach in or like to Hollywood, say, when you're adapting the sort of source material into anime?
It's somewhat like, I'd say it's a little different, obviously, because like the animated format and all that. I think it kind of gives like a different approach, specifically with like a lot of manga stuff as well, especially with shonens nowadays. You see that there's a lot of like free room to kind of enhance the fights or kind of add your own visual flair to it when you're doing like the anime adaptations. So there's some fights in some animes that end up getting a bit like adjusted a bit. They change up the choreography a little bit to make it kind of more engaging and fun in the anime format than the manga format.
Okay.
And you need, and that's like a thing I kind of want to talk about in terms of adaptations as well. It's not like as cut and clear as like adapt everything word for word, frame for frame, and just put it in the movie or like whatever. There are some times where you got to make some adjustments. Like there are some things that you kind of have to look at, and you have to be like, this doesn't work in a movie format. This works better in a book format. We need to work around this a little bit. And it's fine if I'm completely fine for changes like that where I can look at it and be like, that makes sense. That works better as a book than it does as a movie. And obviously some movies can take complete like adjustments, like the Blade Runner movies. As much as I don't like them, I recognize why people like them, and I think it's logical that they adapted the book loosely and kind of made as many changes and adjustments as they did, even if I'm not a big fan of them. And it happens. Like not everything works as well, and especially like with manga and anime, there's some fights that might work a bit better in like kind of frame panel, like panel by panel. So the anime fight might take a bit of liberty and kind of add some visual flair to it or something, or add some like more content to the fight because rather than adapting it just like panel by panel, they might find it that the fight's a lot shorter when they do it like that. So they'll add a bit of flair so that they can flesh out the episodes, and that's fair. Like that makes sense. You know, you want to fill out a bit of time so you can get a whole season's worth of like the series. And it's stuff like that that you do have to consider when adapting things. And that's why I think with like video games and movies, it's such a weird area because like there's just so much that might work better for video games than it would in a movie. For books, there's a bit more breathing room of like adapting word for word, but there are still areas where you need to change it a bit. If like sometimes you don't really some movies don't really want the characters' monologue to be completely consistent. You don't need all of their monologues or personal thoughts. Some might be better to cut out. That's just like a brief little thing I wanted to say for adaptations as a whole.
I think because visual storytelling is such a massive part of the medium of anime or movies or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
An actor can convey a certain emotion with their face that you can't really do in a book because you're gonna find it very rough to see that, right? Like
Yeah,
you can read it, but like you have an actor who's gonna act that out.
exactly.
Yeah, that's their job. So, that must be the trickiest thing for a script writer. Not that I write scripts, but moving from like some content to be able to break it down into a piece where you've got an hour and a half movie you need to make, and you need to get all the scenes and all the important stuff. Like that'd be a nightmare for me. If you told me to adapt like this particular thing to the screen, I'd be like, I have no idea. Because so much.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. Because I've done a little bit of screenwriting, so I have a bit of experience in that area.
Yeah. So just back on the anime thing, because I'm curious about it. Like, do you find that? But again, like, is it? I guess it would vary from studio to studio, right?
Yes, absolutely. Some studios are just worse, realistically.
Yes. Because I know there's plenty of studios that just adapt stuff because they're hungry for some money and they just want to pick it up and get it out there, and then pick up their sort of
Yeah, well, like especially early on with anime as well, adaptations were less about. From what I understand, like I don't want to sound like I know a lot about the anime industry. Like this is more from what I've like gathered from like exposure to the genre or like media and format. But like earlier in like the anime craze, like anime was less about adapting the manga and it was more kind of a commercial benefit for both the manga and the anime. It was like make this anime so that we can advertise that this manga exists and then people come over and read the manga instead of after the anime is done or something. So back like especially like early 2000s, I'd say animes weren't like there. It was a little less consistent in terms of quality of adaptations. You get a fair share of anime that are just kind of really bad adaptations of manga. There'd be a lot of anime that make their own original endings just because they don't want to follow the manga anymore, or like they don't plan to make a sequel or anything. And it's mostly because back then anime were just seen as a way to kind of advertise it. It'd be like, oh, you really like this series, then read this manga. There's like 200 chapters of it that you can read instead. There are obviously your like One Pieces that were more designed to be long running, but that was definitely more of a money decision, I think.
Yep.
And nowadays, I think there's a bit more care and desire to put in a good adaptation rather than just kind of advertising the series. So you get your like stuff like Academia, at least its early seasons, because season 5 was an awful adaptation. But Demon Slayer especially is kind of like a really true to books adaptation that follows it closely. And then also
I like
Jujutsu Kaisen's. Yeah, Jujutsu Kaisen's really good in my opinion. It's a faithful adaptation.
Yeah. Because
Yeah,
I'm
most
so,
mainstream shonen are pretty good nowadays, in my opinion. Academy is the only one that's gotten bad for me, where like last season was just awful as an adaptation.
I'm so hungry for more like Jujutsu Kaisen, man, that this is one of the very rare things where I'm actually keen to go out and give the manga a spin.
I would suggest reading the manga. It's really good. Like it's just as good in my opinion. Like I love the manga just as much.
Yeah, it's just one of those little things. It's one of those rare little pieces where I'm just like, I love this anime so much. And Kagi is the other one, I think, because I love
Yeah,
Kagi.
I said in the Kaguya episode as well that was a series where like adapting it, they pick and choose what they wanted to adapt, and they knew what to leave out and what to leave in. In some areas they screwed up. Like I think there are some things that they could have put in, but like that's a thing where like I could see why they didn't want to just go chapter by chapter adapt everything completely. It'd be too much.
It's more mythology.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, a little bit, or like well, because there are like overarching stories, especially now in the manga, like and
Yeah.
yeah. So I wouldn't really call it an anthology because there are like a lot of the chapters get called back to and referenced and are kind of somewhat important in the end as well.
That's super interesting, man, because I've always wondered how that sort of works in that space. I don't know a lot about the whole industry of it, and it'd be very interesting to sort of, from a Western perspective as well, I guess, to go in there and to have a look at how it all sort of works and how it all ties together.
Yeah, it is definitely a different format, and like I said, it's mostly attributed because there's a different mentality to it. I would say like point blank that in terms of like adaptations, my favorite adaptation of a like book or anything ever is the anime for Monster, which I think like that is one of the few adaptations where I think it is so faithful that the quality of the manga is like just the same as the quality of the anime, where I can read both and watch the anime. I can read and watch the anime, or read the manga and watch the anime, and I think they're both just tens because they're so perfectly adapted. Like that is like the one time where I was just stunned at how frame by frame, just absolutely faithful to the source material it was.
That's crazy. Monster, because I've heard you talk about Monster before.
Monster's really good. It's a big commitment, like 74 episodes. I think it's not as big as most shonen anime, obviously, but it is very slowly paced. But I think it's fucking incredible.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. I'm just it's a weird one because like you sort of start to wonder like on some level when you're adapting something. I guess the question is always like, why are you doing that? What's the
Yeah,
point of the adaptation? Like, and I hate to put everything in the same sort of boat and just say it's a cash grab. I don't know whatever it is. What I'm finding like of late, especially in the last kind of 5 years or so, is that there's just so many things that get adapted. And video games is an excellent example of this, getting adapted into film. But there's so many things that just strike me as it's less for like to tell its own story and to try and just bring this amazing story into a different format, and a lot more of it just seems to be commercially driven. And in the West, like in Hollywood, the Hollywood scene, the series, in some cases, like whatever the case may be. And I wonder, like, if that's still very much a thing in the East with like Japan and how they operate. I wonder if it's still very much like a cash grab thing, or if there's a bit more care, there's a bit more of a culture of taking the original artist's work seriously. And I wonder how that works. I wonder how
I definitely think in some areas for Japan nowadays, well, it's still a cash grab. Specifically, I think that light novels are still somewhat kind of in that mentality of like advertising rather than true adaptation, but they're getting a little bit better where they seem to want to continue like adaptations and make multiple seasons of it and give you a full experience. Light novels seem to be the ones that suffer the most from like adaptations as well, and I think it's mostly because people just like the narrative and like mental like their kind of main character's perspective. But yeah. And then even like with Academia season 5 as well, that like failed hard because it seems like it was just all about like wanting to make money from the movie and readjusting arcs so that like they could get to the movie better faster and like have it be placed in a timeline. Yeah. Academy especially, like that just seems like it seems like Academy is just becoming like a kind of cash cow to that studio, and it's kind of sad to see.
Yeah, fair enough, man. I find it's very fascinating this idea of adaptation and how you do it, and I guess it's kind of crazy to think that if you'd ever create something as a writer, or say, and then someone wants to adapt it into their own vision of what it is, how that would go down, how that would look, how that would work, you know? Like,
Yeah, so it's weird. I used to be a lot more naive about it and just be like, oh, film adaptations are bad, books are always better or something.
yeah,
And like they always leave out details. But now that like I'm older, and I guess because I've done a bit of like writing for like screenwriting and all that, there's like you can't just adapt something page like word for word. It's almost impossible in some cases, like because the movie's not going to be good if it's just a faithful adaptation for it. Actually, a series I was reading actually covered this recently, which is by the Kaguya author, which is Oshinoko, which I recommended and said that it was a really good series earlier in the podcast, I think on the Kaguya episode, but that had a really good story arc focusing on the idea of like adapting an author's work into something, and the author wanted to kind of more adapt it as a series, like a page by page thing, and then eventually realized it just doesn't work for that. And I think that's a thing that most people need to understand. You can't just do like it's not like they have like something to follow. There are some corners you have to cut. Sometimes you can't just adapt it fully. Naturally, things just work better in like different formats, and you might need to kind of readjust things so they can work. Obviously, there are some bad adaptations as well. Some adaptations just do a shit job, and they don't care. But I think in the case of most good adaptations, I don't think they're good because they followed it faithfully, unless it's the case of Monster, which both are perfect in their own way. Um, it's a case that it's normally the case that they had to make decisions about what to adapt and what not to adapt, like Kaguya, where they had to make decisions and they knew what to cover and what would work better in the anime format rather than the manga format. And it's the same with books and movies as well. The Harry Potter books, they cut corners in some areas and it works for them. It's just what happens. And they're different genres, they're different formats entirely, and with the different formats, you need to consider what works better for some things.
yeah, man. I can get around that. I can understand that. It's just it's a very funny world we live in, dude. Where video game adaptations are cash grabs off of. Yeah, I don't know. It's just weird to see how things change and how adaptation, even this sort of whole mentality towards adaptation has shifted. And this has been going on forever. I mean, Hollywood was based off adaptations. Sherlock Holmes and Dracula and Frankenstein, a number of things. It was all based off books. It's been going on ever since like the visual medium of film and animation and everything existed. It all came. But it's just crazy.
I think a lot of that might be why Arcane works so well. It doesn't really feel like a cash grab at all. It feels genuine. It feels like it has a lot of care put into it, and like they actually care about the story and the world and characters that they presented. And like what you're saying at the start about them taking 3 months to make an episode just shows their commitment to the series and how much passion they clearly had for it.
I think it's also very like notable that the freaking studio who makes the game were involved in that.
Yes, exactly.
Huge part of it, and I think in a lot of cases there's not as much involvement from the writers themselves into the actual series proper. And when that does happen, I think that's where because J.K. Rowling was intimately involved in the Harry Potter series, right?
Yes.
In the actual movie series, she was very like she was a key part of that. So that's like a very very notable thing. It's kind of like that kept the whole thing going. I don't think the Tolkien family much cared for the Lord of the Rings adaptation at all, but it's neither here nor there. I still think that was a great job. It's the same with like if you were to say let's make a Skullduggery Pleasant series. I think that Derek Landy to a degree would need to be involved in that series to make it really properly good.
That's fair call.
And I really hope that with the new Reacher series coming out that Lee Child has got some investment in that, and he's been consulted and he's brought on as a guy who overlooks everything and sort of keeps it narratively cohesive and sort of, and understandably directors need to, like, they are presenting their own spin on it, like it's a visual adaptation, so they have to have like a degree of freedom to do what they want to do, but there's got to be a sort of, I feel like there's got to be both. I feel like a little bit of writer input's good because then you can kind of keep the soul of the thing together, but I feel like if you pull out of it, like if you just go completely in another direction, say we're adapting this, we're doing this, we've bought the rights, we can do what we want with it now, you do run the trashing the soul of the story.
Exactly.
But yeah, I think, like I said, I just bringing it all back around, man. I think Arcane is one of the best examples of an adaptation of video games to the visual medium ever. And I think
agree.
I reckon that if we can get some more of that going on, if we can get some more people who are more like creators of series and the visual medium, who are like a lot more intimately familiar with their source material and they're willing to consult the people who made it in the first place, you're going to have a much better, much smoother ride, and you're going to create something that's going to please fans, but it's also going to pull in people who don't follow that. They don't necessarily, people who just have no idea about said video game or book or whatever else. You'll pull them in through that. And I think that would be the best way to just going forward. I think as a mentality, I think that's a much better way of doing things. And I'd like to see more of that. I'd like to see less sort of quote unquote cash grabs from Hollywood to try and capitalize on a series that's big right now. And I'd like to see more, just more original content that kind of supports or gets around the games and works in a different kind of way. I think that'd be great. But dude, I think we should call it there because it's getting on in the dash.
Yes, no, I definitely think that's a good wrap there.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this. I really appreciated this. You cheeky bastard, you pulled one over me. I'm really glad that they do. That was really sick, and I look forward to the next one, man. Hopefully, the quality isn't as garbage because I'm basically eating my phone to make sure you're hearing all my words.
Well, we'll see how it turns out.
Don't call it the Trainwreck Part 2, please.
We'll see. We'll see.
All right, cool. Well, we'll call it there. Everyone have a good time. Appreciate you. Go watch Arcane. Just do it.
Yeah, watch Arcane.
All right. Catch you later.